Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Filmmaking Production Diary. I am your host, Miguel Ortega, and this is my lovely co-host, Tranma.
Hello, everyone.
So what is this? So we basically go through the making, step-by-step, grueling process of making an animated film in Unreal Engine. Every week we go through whatever we're going through. All the good stuff and a lot of the bad stuff. But at the end, we end up with a movie. So we did this last year with The Voice in the Hollow. And this year we're doing a little story about two, well, not two, it's more than two. It's a little society of characters called the Threadlings. And our main character is caught and his best friend Mayo. Yeah. So this week we had a lot of problems, technical issues, and I'm still not happy with the script. So I'm almost done, but I'm not done with it yet. So Tran, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Let's see if anybody's here.
Hey, Ricardo.
Ricardo is in the house. What's up? That's it. That's our one fan.
This week I had so many problems. I think I'm going to pull all my hair out. It's some bad shit. So
net bug.
I'll get into that. First, I'll show you what I managed to get in Unreal. I did not finish setting up anything because I started encountering all these problems. So the lighting, all of that stuff, materials, none of that stuff looks good.
Ben Ramos in the house.
So I'll play what I have right now. So basically, the character is still not rigged because I want to make sure that it's all ready to be rigged. And I already caught multiple problems on this. So the next step is trying to figure out how to fix it. And I have not figured out how to fix it. But this is what I have so far.
That looks great.
Yes, but there's all kinds of there's a lot of issues.
Keep playing it. I just want to take a look at it again. Yeah. So this is Caught. So he's a mage. So he wants to be a protector. He's born a mage, but he's a stutterer, so he's very bad at it. Yeah. So he's a little cute guy that wants something he can't have.
Yeah. I'll cut to like a tight look right here with some fur. So there's a lot I'm trying to do right now, like seeing how the hair looks. So this hair here was made out of XGen, and I already had like done some R&D stuff before, figuring out how to get the hair out, because yeah, there's all kinds of issues with that too. So we don't bring any rigs into Unreal, and therefore when you export hair out of mine, you bring it in, the hair has to be, every frame has to be exported from the animation, which makes it really, really heavy. We use Alembics, and just for background on Alembic, it's a file format that is very industry standard in the film industry.
It's a geometry cache.
Yeah.
So it stores every single frame of the animation as a blend shape, and it blends between all of them.
Yeah, and there is no rig. So it strips out the rig and you just have the mesh. And there's a lot of reasons why we use this. For one, we have cloth simulation. I mean, we're supposed to show our face.
Well, I wanted to show this first.
Okay. We have cloth simulation, and cloth simulation is just not going to be, it's just not going to be rigged. So it's going to be a Alembic file no matter what. And then for our characters, they are not rigged because they tend to go through shot modeling. So we are not a big budget company, and we don't have a huge team. So we don't have a rigger full-time working on something to constantly fix it when something is not working. So once it gets rigged, if we run into issues, we have to shot correct it. So that will mean we'd have to sculpt on top of the animation based on the shot that needs to be fixed. And so that's why we have to use Alembic. And that is also a film pipeline too. And there's nothing that I'm saying that is weird about that. That's just how it is. The issues we're coming into is Alembic support.
Can you go back to the running one?
Yeah. The issues we're coming to is Alembic support for in Unreal.
Just let it play on a loop.
Well, I'm going to have to minimize it to show a couple of things.
Okay.
Before I get into some of the problems, I can already see a few things here. Like, I don't think hair is going to be really necessary far away. And I also slightly worried what happens to the hair when you're not looking at it up close. So just kind of left the camera. You see I don't have any kind of environment. It's just a character floating. But let's say I'm this close and I turn off the light and I start moving around. If I don't have a direct light hitting it, you can see I'm getting all these weird shadows. And that's just coming from the hair itself, right? If I have a light hitting it, it doesn't seem like that's a problem. But I can see how hair might be a problem in a darker scene like this, and looking at it not super close, or maybe super close, I don't know. But you can see all the shadows. So there's already, I feel like there's going to be issues.
There's got to be a solution for that.
Sure, overlight it or something like that, and then bring it down.
No, there's probably some stupid checkbox that you just have to turn on.
Sure. I'm not there yet. This stuff is a pain in the butt to me. Like, because you don't worry about that. You only worry about this type of stuff in Unreal. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's one of the things. There's a comment, cash shadows. Yeah, you can turn off cash shadows in a Groom. That could be an option.
Well, I think that's a good option, especially because there's such little tiny wrinkles, right? Not wrinkles, little hairs.
Yeah. So, but that's not even my biggest concern. So let's kind of step back. Let me minimize this. So first, this character, this is the same run cycle inside of Maya. And it was just auto-rigged using Mixamo. For now, just to test out to see the problems that we would have. And I did catch a bunch of stuff. So right now I have 3 versions. Wait, let me step back. The cloth is simulating Marvelous, and I have 3 versions of Marvelous installed. I have version 10, 11, and 12. I had upgraded to version 12, but I discovered a few bugs, which I have to email them and ask them about. This is version 12, the latest one. And if I play through the cycle, notice that there's clipping of the clothing right here. So you can see the mesh underneath interpenetrating all that white. That is the character mesh. And the cloth interpenetrating here. Now, what's happening with this bug, this is pretty bad, is that it will actually sim completely fine in Marvelous 12. And then the moment it finishes simming, it does its pop, and the pop will do that because it would just moves the mesh, and the underneath mesh will pop through it. So that drove me kind of crazy. So what I did then is I went, okay, this is a Marvelous 12 bug. I can't wait for them to fix it. I will email them and let them know about it, but I can't hold on that. So what I did then is I went to version 11. Version 11 is really bad. I didn't use version 11 on Voice in the Hall. I used version 10. So 12.
Version 11 is bad in terms of buggy.
It's really slow and it's super unstable. As far as this right here, when you're using Marvelous and you're simming, Marvelous does have a couple of simulation features. It's being covered by the live thing. You could do regular and GPU, but when you go to like final animation, I believe it's just using CPU. So like if you look over here, you have custom, normal, and default. Normal, you probably just have to use CPU. I don't think GPU is really an option. And not just that, it looks really unstable. So anyway, I don't think that's a good workaround. I just think they have to fix it. If you look at this, so this is version 11. So all the buttons, which are these balls, they just like fly off its head, right? Which is fun. So that I spent too much time wasting on. It's very frustrating. First, when I downloaded version 11, I couldn't even run it because I had to change my firewall settings. So I spent all this time figuring out how to run it. And then when I finally ran it, I feel like, oh, this is the worst. So I went down that hole. So now I'm back in version 10. So version 10 will now actually fix this. So that's where I spent some of my time. The other thing.
Play it again. I want to see the balls dancing.
Yeah. I mean, this has actually turned out pretty well. It seems like it has a problem with buttons. So these guys right here, they're like spinning around. So that's actually like a button disc. And it was worse than some other versions. It was like flipping around, like spinning all crazy. So yeah, that is one thing. Okay. Now the other thing, and this one is the biggest problem for me. Let's hide Cod's body. Was it complaining about strands having negative length? I don't know what that is because I don't have negative length strands. I don't, and yeah, so I'm not sure what you mean by that. Okay, so the other problems I have is my UVs are getting destroyed. So if you look here,
this one's really weird.
My UVs, my textures are not supposed to look like that. I might crash my computer because I have a lot of applications running to show all this stuff. Just give me a second so I can circle. So like here, oh, looks like a cat. There you go. I can kind of draw. It's been a bad week. So all these UVs are really messed up, and it's making the textures look.
Can you zoom into it a little bit more because
well, it just clips out.
Oh, it does.
Like right here.
There you go. Even that, you can see it.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. It's all over the place. So, I mean, I know the texture is not supposed to look like that. If you look here, like on this part, it's really messed up.
Yeah, they just look like they have like a distorted skew to them.
Yeah. So it's all over the place, right?
Odd.
So it's really problematic. Some of it is not so obvious, but I know something is wrong. Let me change the view to unlit. So like here, these stripes are all warped. And you might go, well, I just UV'd it bad or I textured it bad. But they're like really wobbly and they're being pulled all over the place. And again, it's happening everywhere, right? And if I compare it, I'm like, first of all, I thought I was like losing my mind. Did I just like do a bad job? Was it me or something happening when it's importing? So I pulled the same frame in with the animation, and you could see that the stripes are really clean and they're not supposed to wobble. And you don't want that. Like, I don't want that. Right? And you can see it looks fine. And then this area is what it's supposed to look like, just a clean diamond, right?
Just nice and straight lines.
Yeah. And that's how it should be, like this. See? So we ran a couple tests. Miguel was trying to help me figure this out. And this problem is specific to Alembics. So if you bring in...
Well, no, it's not specific to Alembics.
It happens, but you can't fix it on
Alembics.
Yes.
But the problem exists on an FBX also.
Yes, or a regular stationary model.
Yeah.
So one way, for those who don't care, because maybe you're not working with Alembics, let me just make a new folder. So if I take that one single frame and it's just an OBJ, for example, and I drop it in here, one way you can fix this, if this is not an Alembic, is you can look for on the import, use full, it's the font is so tiny, use full precision UVs. I don't think I know how to spell. Okay, so if you check that on there, that will actually prevent that problem.
But
But
that's not there on Alembic.
yeah, that option is not there in Alembic. So if I come back,
So if we bring in that same model without Alembic and you press that button, it'll fix it.
yeah, and you can see it like here in this window. Let's make this unlit. That it fixes that on a non-Alembic file, right? So here, when I look at that, you see, it's normal.
Yeah.
Now, when I try to open the Alembic, so when I import an Alembic, I get these three: a skeletal mesh, animation sequence, and a skeleton. And I try to open that, and right now I don't have textures assigned. There is no like UV precision on any of these options, and there's no option like that on import. If you open a regular static mesh, like just a regular file, OBJ or FBX, you can find under the details the UV precision, but I can't find that on Alembic, right? So now I just have this messed up thing.
Yeah, look, what's the logic there though? I don't understand why you would have to turn on the use the UVs correctly setting.
No, there's like no version in this world where anybody wants their UVs to change when you're importing it.
It's a performance thing for sure.
Yeah, but like nobody wants their UVs to be jacked up. Like, okay, let's just screw up your UV.
Well, the way I see it is it's probably for performance. The problem is once you're loading in a bunch of UDIMs, clearly you don't care about that.
There's a question. Does Alembic import have reduced keys? I don't know about reduced keys. It does have a compression setting.
And you disabled it.
Yeah. So I went and I tried to change things and nothing was working.
We always set the compression to off because if not, the vertices will get all jacked up.
Yeah, we don't compress anything. So we bring everything full. Now, this problem I didn't have on Voice in the Hollow. So in the Voice in the Hollow, actually, I did encounter it, but I didn't understand what was causing the problem. I managed to figure out how to work around it, but the workaround, I didn't understand the workaround either because I don't really understand why it's doing this, right? What I realize, if I show you, let's go to my Maya and let's look at my UDIMs. So down here is like 1 and this is 10, right? So I have 11, 12. 13 UDIMs over here. So I just started doing weird things. I started trying to figure out where it's having problems because it's not actually problems in all my UDIMs. So for example, I noticed up here, okay, let me step back. On Voice in the Hollow, the character only had 4 UDIMs and I had no problems. So I'm like, okay. Then I start also looking at the problem, looking where there weren't any problems. And I noticed on UDIM 13, there is no problem. So if I come over here and I try to double check it in Unreal, UDIM 13 are these balls right here, and they look correct. It's really easy to detect the problem on the textures because the grain will just like wobble. So if something's supposed to be straight on the fabric texture, it's very easy to see wobble. Like
that's actually great. These textures are actually great for this to detect it. Yeah.
Because you'll see it, but that's the problem. It's great to see it, so then your problem is really obvious. So it doesn't have to do with the high number of UDIMs. What I realize it's doing, and I don't know why it does this, is that let me back up, is it will do these four, this area UDIMs. So I can go up to 1 through 4, and I can move up on the rows. But if I go over into these UDIMs, I will have damage. So that's what I realize. I don't, do I understand?
What did you go above that?
I don't.
Vertically?
Well, I know right now it works on 3 rows. That's all I know. I don't know what happens if I go to the 4th row. Yeah. So I have not figured out why it does this. And then on Voice in the Hollow, what happened is when I laid out my characters, normally like on a film layout, if I select all my characters like this, no UVs are overlapping. So right now you can see I have overlapping UVs like this one and this one. In the film pipeline, I would select the whole character and each one would have its own unique tile assignment. But what I ran into in Voice in the Hollow was that past this section here, this yellow area, it was behaving like that, but I didn't understand that. So now I understand that.
So the UE forums. So I looked in the UE forums, and there's a ton of solutions for it, but not on an Alembic level, only on the FBX level, and that's the whole precision UVs.
Yeah. So we don't have that. In any case, what I tried to do is I grabbed one of my tests here. So I took the same Marvelous UV, and then all I did was just grab this and went to my UV window and I moved them up and down, right? Whole numbers. And I'm going to get into that too. So I realized these all work and these don't. So when I come in here, and this took me.
The 4th one doesn't work?
The 5th one doesn't work.
Okay, the 5th.
So here's my restacked UVs here. And I manually moved them and I manually renamed the files, which sucks. And you can see here when I moved them, they now work. But I'm still having small issues and anything that's in the 5th, in the 5th area. So I don't know. This causes all kinds of problems because now my Substance Painter file, if I change my UVs, my Substance Painter file is not going to line up. And then any changes I want to do in the future, it's going to be really bad because I'm going to have 2 different meshes. So I probably have to go back to Substance and fix it, which is going to be really time consuming. But I know from experience that I should fix it because if I work with a broken mesh, it's not good. I'm going to end up spending more time in the long run dealing with something that, my mesh in Unreal is different than my mesh inside Substance Painter. So what that would probably mean is it's going to take me at least 2 days to fix the Substance Painter file. Now, the other thing that sucks, if I come back to Maya, and I go over here, okay, so I know if let's say I want to move these UDIMs, very, very easy, right? Very easy in Maya. I just have to grab my shells and I just use this like little arrow and I can move them up and down, right? And they're moving them a whole UDIM. Hold on. They're moving a whole UDIM and the UVs are not going to jitter. So the worst thing I can do to myself since I already textured this, right, is like move it like that or have it a little bit off because now my textures will line up, right? And I think, you guys get that. Now the problem is in Marvelous, and this is where my UVs come from, and it comes from Marvelous because my mesh is simming from Marvelous, right? So if I come over here into my UV window, you can see that's my UVs. There's not like a move. Oh, there's not a move UDIM tool. So like, this is it. This is what you get. And you just have to move it manually. So now if I I want to move them. It's not like in Maya where I can just move it one whole UDIM. I just have to do that. And that's how I laid it out. And there's not a tool. And I tried to Google and find that. So what did I do? Well, what I did is I go, there has to be a way to move one whole UDIM somehow, right? Because if I can't do that, I have to retexture everything and I'm in so much trouble. What I realized is if oh shit, I can't move it. What the? Okay, I can move this. I can only move this Marvelous 11 and 12. I can't do this in 10. I just realized something on the stream.
Well, that's good.
Yes, I don't. Oh.
Well, this is the reality of production. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, but this is a nightmare. So here, I just realized if I hit the up key in
11
and probably 12,
well, for sure 12.
I can move it whole UDIM. But right now I'm stuck in 10.
Is it backwards compatible?
Yes, but not 100%. It's not 100% backwards compatible. So what does that mean? So technically, if you make a Marvelous file in version 12, you can open it in version 10. But I have to remake certain things, like the buttons, for example, or it acts weird. Sometimes it does like weird jittery stuff. So that has to be remade. If I look at version 10.
So this problem is happening because version 12 was giving you issues, or else you would have figured this out much quicker.
Yes. So I'm working in version 10 because the simulation is stable. But in here, if I try to move the UVs, it's like this.
Yeah, this is when you were pressing it 100 times per.
Yes. So the only way
to do it in 10, Tran was literally saying, don't say anything, and then she was pressing the arrow 100 times.
Yes, the only way for me to move this in one whole UDIM in 10 is to hit the arrow key 100 times. And then it will move it over.
That's awesome.
So, okay, so what is my problem? My problem is I already have textures on this, and I don't want to offset my UVs. Yeah. And if I go to 12 and I do this in 12, I have to like bring it into 10, and I have to fix the things that don't sim. As far as what doesn't sim over, it's like little weird things, like what will happen. So if you notice here, in version 10, the simulation is not exactly the same. I don't know what goes into it. I just know that it doesn't behave exactly the same. So what I had to do is I had to place these cuts so that the cloth, it just kind of, it like goes into his knees. So I have these slits, these little blue areas, and this is on his like little dress right around here. The other thing that happens is I notice these buttons, they break. So the buttons have to be remade and resewn. So I'm putting them back in. It sucks. I'm gonna say this sucks. Right? This whole thing sucks. And in Substance, the other thing I have right now that's an issue is that Substance is not very easy to replace the file. You can, but provided that your UDIMs don't change, right? So my thing is the UDIMs are changing because I have to change them because of Unreal.
And you want to maintain all your layers in case you need to make changes, which you absolutely will.
Yeah. So there's all these issues. So yeah, first I have to figure out if one, I can exceed. So I know this here, this works, but I have 13 UDIMs. So that means I have to go into the 5th row. Does it have problems with the 5th row? If it does, what will I stick here? Yeah, it's a freaking headache. So I have to test to see if my 13 UDIM will support like the 5th row. So I know that in this whole box, everything is fine. It's an Alembic
These all sound like the names of horror movies about CG, like the 13th UDIM, the 5th row.
Yeah, so we should call our title the 13th UDIM.
The 13th UDIM.
13 is a bad number, right? And it's supposed to be an unlucky number.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to change my UDIM, right? My complete UVs right now, because I think I know how to figure out and fix it in Substance. What I'll probably have to do is export my mask and then rebuild the file or do something stupid like that. Yeah. So that's my thing there. So anyway, that's where I'm stuck. So I'm going to be doing invisible work, trying to realize this. I think for anyone that, who thinks about using Alembics and who's going to have a lot of UDIMs, hopefully this will help you out. So then you don't do the same thing that I'm going to end up doing.
And next week we might have a solution for it that we figured out, just so you guys know. I mean, this is the reality of this stream is some streams is us just trying to figure stuff out, and then other ones are us like flying through stuff and making stuff look awesome. And then this is a real stream, right? We're figuring this all out as we go.
And I think the problem, like I think a lot of people use Marvelous. I'm not the only one. And a lot of people use UDIMs, and I'm not the only one. So, I think this is going to help somebody. If you use Marvelous, you're going to have to bring in Alembic. That's just how it is. Now, maybe what I'll talk about is like how I'm handling the hair. Now, what I ended up doing is deciding in the beginning, and I mentioned this really early in our first stream, so I'll kind of mention it again. Let me just set my project. I know that I want hair for the fibers to look soft, particularly on close-ups, maybe not at a distance. This is great, and thanks for tuning in all the time. So really appreciate your participation and you being on there and the suggestions that you're giving. So okay. So back to that. So I tested between. So I'm stuck in Maya. That's just the life. That's how it is. Do I think Maya is the best? No, but I'm stuck in it because that's what I've been using over years, and Maya's kind of dropped the ball and all that stuff. We get questions all the time. Why don't you use Blender? Because we'd have to learn something new. And right now we're trying to learn Unreal, right? And my brain's small. That's why I just can't learn that much stuff. And I'm stuck with this, and everyone is stuck with that. So let's start with that. Now, what does that mean? If I'm in Maya, I basically have XGen as a hair option. And I thought about using Yeti. I know that there's also Ornatrix, but I didn't want to get into that. Both have support to get your hair into Unreal. What I didn't realize about Yeti until I wasted 2 weeks doing this, and that was not on the stream, is that Yeti it can only export one frame of the hair. That's it. It cannot export anything past that first frame. I know that there's that Meerkat demo that was done in Unreal, and that used Yeti. And the reason why that works is because they brought in the rigged Meerkat into Unreal. So they're applying one frame onto a rig, right? One frame of hair onto a rig. That's not our pipeline because we're using Alembics. So what happens when you use an Alembic is that when you use an Alembic, you can't use one frame. You need, if your shot has 100 frames, you need all 100 frames, right? Which creates a really huge file. And that's the situation. There's a question here. Isn't there a way to separate the Alembic on import into Unreal? Let's see. They sim hair in UE. I don't know if they sim the hair or not. My point is like, it doesn't, I don't know if they simulate it The point is they only needed one frame of an Alembic. They're not using multiple frames. One frame on a rig model. Our whole thing is that we don't have the rig, and that completely.
Yeah, they're applying the groom onto the rig in Unreal. We're doing it with Alembic.
Yes.
So there is no rig.
There's no rig, so that one frame is not going to work. It's just not going to attach. I cannot figure out how to attach a groom onto an Alembic file without it exploding. So when I attach hair, try to stick it into Alembic, it will explode. And it wouldn't work anyway because it does. An Alembic completely strips the hair system, right? There's no way to separate the Alembic on import to Unreal. Well, it's not about separating it at all. It's just about I need a ton of frames.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. You don't need this. And then that's the other thing. You don't need this in Maya because XGen exists. And if you have Yeti will exist, right? So you don't need to cache out hundreds of frames in Maya. You just have to pop the hair system onto the model, and then you just render whatever it is that you want to render. You don't need 100 frames exported because it's being exported into Unreal, which doesn't have XGen and doesn't have Yeti inside of Unreal. You have to do all the frames. And there's not any way to work around. What I realized with Yeti is Yeti doesn't support groom cache, right? So I need not one single frame, but I need hundreds of frames. So what that's done is make me stuck with XGen, which is fine. I have no problem with it because I'm just making fuzz anyway. And XGen is actually pretty good. It's got problems, right? Like anything else, but it works fine for me. So just with that preface, and I know that was kind of confusing, but remember, we're using Alembic, and that changes everything. Is it a problem in a traditional pipeline? Not a problem. It's a problem in Unreal? Yes. So I was talking about Marvel's like, is there a way to separate the Alembic on import? Well, I don't know if you mean separate the parts of the cloth, but that wouldn't fix the problem because the problem that I have is the UDIM placement. So even if I just extract, I don't want to do that either. So whenever I export Marvelous file, it brings me one whole mesh like this, right? And I don't want to cherry pick stuff because if I have to do that, it's very manual, and that is not a good pipeline. So the pipeline I'm looking for is just to push a button, let it do its thing, export it, and then bring it in. Like I want to do the least amount of manual work. And right now, if I understand your question, I don't have a way of separating the cloth into parts. Like literally when I come in here and I go, remember I'm stuck in version 10, not 12, right? Unless they fix this problem. And I want to export an Alembic file. It will be Alembic Ogawa. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. And I don't have to select anything. And it's just going to export the cloth. It won't export geometry. In Marvelous, if you want to just export OBJ, for example, you can be selective. So I can say, I only want to export this pattern, and I can export the OBJ selected, right? So you have options when it's just a stationary model. When it's in Alembic, everything is one thing, and I don't have that kind of control. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah.
In any case, I still have UDIM problems. I don't think that it will be fixed. I just think it has to do with the placement, it being passed in this area. All right, so moving on from that, let's jump into XGen. So there's a couple things that are a pain in the butt with XGen. It has to do with the fact that XGen came from Disney, and it's a PTEX system. So it doesn't read UVs when you're painting anything. The other thing that has to do with is Maya doesn't know what UDIMs are. So it's so outdated. Like you can have UDIMs on your model and it can read the UDIM textures. But if you ever want to use their paint tool, it's super confused about that, right? So what I have to do is, let's say, let me just kind of delete this. And let me delete that. Let's see. Worst case scenario, you could have a script that export, let's say, 20 parts of Alembic from MD and use a UE function that gathers those into, which sucks. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that fixes stuff either. And I can't script. So I can't do it. So I don't know how to do that. Let me set this project somewhere else. Let's call it demo. And set it here. And let me save this file there. And let's call this demo. Okay. Now, if I look at my UVs on my character has so here's a comment. I don't either. I've never had so many UDEMs. This is probably a lot of UDEM. I've never brought this many into Unreal. Have I worked with this many UDEMs? Yes, but not in Unreal. And now get to see what happens. Okay, so here's a problem with XGen, right? Let's say I want to paint mask. And in Maya, if I want to use XGen system, I have all these UDEMs. So this is not going to work well for me. What you have to do is I create multiple UV sets. So if you look here in my UV set editor, I have an XGen set and I have my regular UDEM set. When I work in XGen, I will grab this XGen set and copy it into my default, which is called map 1. So map 1 is your default ones, and XGen ones and UDEM ones are the ones that I manually created. How did I create them? You can open UV set editor and you can just create new ones, just like that, and you can rename them. And map 1 will be just default, the way Maya will read that, and I don't try to mess with that. Once I have this set in here, what I can do is just determine what I actually want to apply, right, as a hair system. So technically, let's say I come back here. I can pick which ones I want, and I usually go by UDEM because it's kind of cleaner, but I don't have to do, you don't have to necessarily do that, but it makes it easier. And whichever I'm having selected will be what receives the hair. Okay. Now, I usually double check because it's still in UV selection mode. So what I did here is I just isolate that selection, and I'm going to make sure I select it in face mode. That way it doesn't get confused about anything. Okay. So now I have the geometry I want to apply. You don't want to apply hair system onto the whole mesh if you don't want to put hair on top of everything. Here's a quick question. I suggest something. What if you pack everything in one square? Then you should have no problems.
You would still have problems. You'd have to have like a 20K tile, 20K image.
Yeah. Then my textures will fall apart.
Yeah, you need that resolution.
Especially on fabric.
Yeah.
Otherwise it will look very pixelated. And we want to do close-up shots and make sure it holds up.
Yeah. You'd have to have a gigantic texture. Gigantic.
Yeah. I will say, like, in my experience, so an 8K map, let's say this is 8K square, right? And then we know that within the 8K, it takes 4K maps. That's the same resolution, right? In my experience, this is slower to load than 4 of these.
Even though it's the same amount of resolution.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the same in Unreal, and it's definitely the same when you're rendering.
So you would have to make a map that is like 32K.
It would probably just crash.
It would just crash.
Yeah. Even though it could load 32K worth of resolutions, as long as each map is broken up into not one giant 32K map.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It would be ideal just put everything in one texture, but it's not going to work because of that. Yeah.
So we're asking for too much trouble. It's just we just have to fix it. Okay. So let me move forward on the hair. So let me backtrack a little bit. If you don't want to put hair on top of the entire body, you should be selective and select the faces and apply. You can mask out the areas where you don't want hair to apply. but XGen is still going to run slow. So if you put XGen on top of the entire mesh, even if you don't show in areas, it's going to run way slower than if you're selective about the faces. It took me time to realize that, right? Now, I'll just go over here to the XGen tab, and I'll create a new description. And I will keep everything in default, except for control primitives by placing and shaping guides. You can name your description or your collection. I'll just keep this at default. And I'll just hit create. And again, remember, I'm using XGen because I need a groom cache. I don't know if Ornatrix supports groom cache, but Yeti does not. And I went through weeks figuring that out. Now, once I have this here, if I try generate here, nothing will come out. And that's because I don't have any guides. Let me just hide this. So what I will do is just manually place these guides. Now, it's not really difficult to groom. We do have a second character coming in, and that character is actually going to have hair on their head. So then maybe I'll get more into it again. Have I tried? Well, it's not a bad idea. I don't know if it has the hair exploding bug. Yeah, I'm sure Ornatrix can export Alembic. I don't know if it will support a groom cache. What I need is not Alembic. I need a cache. I need an Alembic cache that has more than one frame. And I know that Yeti doesn't. Does Ornatrix export a groom cache, Ted? And then the only other problem is I don't know how to use Ornatrix, and I don't want to learn it. Houdini effects has good hair sims. No, I just don't know how to use Houdini. I'm just stupid, right? I'm limited in what I know. Again, I'm stuck in Maya. Houdini is probably.
We know that you could do everything in Houdini.
Yeah.
We know that you could do this stream through Houdini if you tried. You could wash your clothes through Houdini. You could do everything through Houdini, but we don't know Houdini.
Yes.
But
Houdini is probably the answer.
Yeah.
It's probably the answer, completely the answer.
Houdini is always the answer.
Ted says, yes, that Ornatrix can support groom cache. A cache, not a single frame. So maybe in the future, I'll look into that. But I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I should just suck it up and learn Houdini. Let's see. A Mixamo skeleton should be enough to set up the character in Unreal with bound Alembic rooms and Alembic animation sequence. Attach a secret. A Mixamo skeleton, you mean that's a rig, right? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, because if you're bringing in an Alembic, or you're bringing in the FBX.
Yes, because the whole point is that
we use
we don't bring in FBX. Everything is Alembic for us, and we have to stick with the Alembic pipeline.
Yeah, you put yes, but I don't know if you mean yes to what you mean yes to.
Because if you're bringing, the whole thing is we can't bring in the rig, and that's not negotiable for us. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, we use all kinds of shot modeling, right? So that means we sculpt on top of the animation. In order to sculpt on top of the animation, it has to be an Alembic file. And we had to do that a lot. So some of it was to correct the rig, and some of it was just to fix the facial animation. So we did that in Voice in the Hollow. You had mocap X, and we had a really good face rigger artist do all that stuff, and we had really great animators. So no one dropped the ball on anything. They all did excellent work. But sometimes the face looks messed up. It just deforms weird. And so that has to be resculpted. So what is happening in Voice in the Hollow is I had to sculpt the face and correct the deformations, because sometimes the eyelid was going into the eyeball, or the eyelid got really big or something like that. They were really obvious problems. And that's why we have to use Alembic, and we cannot bring in a rig.
That's how we do it. So the way we do it is we just bring in an Alembic file, no rig whatsoever.
Yes,
And the reason is for what Tran just said, that by doing it this way, we don't go from Maya or Marvelous directly to Unreal. We go from Maya or Marvelous into a shot modeling program where we can make sure everything is perfect. And it's almost like sculpting. Imagine ZBrush if it had a timeline. So you could go in and be like, oh, in that one frame, the clothing slightly interpenetrates. You could just grab it and then just shift it and fix it and smooth it out. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and we use it.
We use it for everything we ever do.
And it's not just to show that this is a film industry pipeline. Everyone I know uses it. Everyone I know that works at a big company, all shot models.
All shot models.
They all shot model. They just don't talk about it.
It's one of those like black arts.
Yes.
You know, like no, everyone is embarrassed about it because in a way it makes it seem like, oh, it actually isn't some crazy proprietary tool that makes everything perfect. It's actually some poor, you know, sucker there going frame by frame and fixing it or making the muscles bulge. That's another use for it. Like, okay, you can't afford a muscle simulation tool
or even
shot modeling. You could do this so that when the character does this, you just manually raise the bicep a little bit. And now it looks like, oh, wow, look, they have this crazy muscle system. There was no muscle system. You just animated it.
It was just sculpted by an artist.
Yeah.
Even if you do have a muscle system, it's not perfect.
It's not perfect. And
so some artists, a good character artist, senior character artist will come in there and sculpt it. Everyone I know does it.
Frame by frame, baby. That's
yeah. All my friends, I'm talking about every big company, Weta, ILM, they all do it.
Digital Domain, we had a whole department for that.
They all do it. So I'm not going to stop the Alembic thing. Everyone I know is using that. It's just not supported in Unreal.
It's supported. It's
not fully supported. Right? It has all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
With all this stuff.
No, it's fully supported. It's just buggy, but it's supported.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not easy. It's easy. So if I wasn't using Unreal, the way I want to work is not a problem, and the way anyone wants to work is not a problem.
So how do we deal with the gigantic Alembic file? So the
one
thing that helps is the fact that the character, like meaning all the organic bits, is separate from the clothing. The files are gigantic, and the problem is that there's like around 2.5, 3 gigabyte limit. After that, Unreal crashes at import. So what we would have to do on the Voice in the Hollows, we would need to make sure that every piece we brought in was beneath 2.5, 2 or 3 gigs. Try to keep it in that region, and it would import.
Now there is a feature where supposedly you can stream it, which is a plugin which will stream files that are larger.
It's terrible.
It crashes.
It's worse than crashes. Like you can't even see it in the viewport in real time. So if you try to press play, it'll take forever to load up. It crashed nonstop for us. Like it became like completely unworkable. You didn't even know if it was working. You'd have to render it in order to see it.
And then the other thing, when you render, it would drop frames.
It would drop frames, yeah.
So frame 10 is fine. Frame 11, the mesh disappears.
Yeah, we did a whole stream on this.
Yeah.
And it was.
If you must have something, what you can do is stitch Alembic together. So let's say you have 20 frames, and your 20 frames is 6 gigabytes, right? So you can export the first 10 frames, or let's say 5 gigabytes or whatever. You're reaching a certain limit. And we know the first 10 frames will work out fine. So you export the first 10, and then it will be under, 2 gigabytes or whatever size. And then you export the second from 10 to 20. And so you have 2 different sections of animation. You put them in sequencer and you stitch them together. You just put them together. And that's how you do it.
That's how we ended up doing. What did we end up doing that way?
The
vines?
Yeah.
No, was it the vines?
Yeah, we did multiple things like that. So I stitched stuff like that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is like, we are using Marvelous to sim, but sometimes the sim actually explodes. So on some of the marvelous meshes, they are also shot model, meaning they're resculpted so they don't explode.
Yeah. And that has to do in particular, like if a character falls to the ground and you have like
it's too fast.
Two things. Oh yeah, too fast, or two things colliding into it at once, like the ground and the character. It would have issues.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, I hope it doesn't come off like we're just trashing the Unreal, because we're not. It's just, these are just the workarounds that we're figuring out, and every program has its own.
Yeah, I'm frustrated, but there's nothing that's ever perfect.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's perfect. Everything has to be worked around, and you have to figure out what it is. The last project, we didn't have this many items, and this time we do. And so now I'm running into issues that I didn't run into the last one.
Yeah.
While I'm working on it, I'm super cranky because clearly I am going to be cranky about doing it. So I probably sound much more negative than I should be negative.
Yeah.
But it's just a fact of life. In any case, if I knew, for example, how to use Houdini, or if I knew how to use every single program on Earth and if I was smarter, then I wouldn't have that many problems.
It's not about smarter. It's just we don't have the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm also limited, right? I can't just learn new things. It's a huge time investment. And ultimately, my goal is not to be the best in every software. It's just that I just want to tell a story. I just want to make something look good, and everything is a tool. And I try to make that tool work with what I know.
So this guy Fex is 15 and learning Houdini.
I think you're doing good.
That's good. You'll be rich by the time you're 18.
Yeah, I think that's actually great.
Yeah.
I think Houdini is a good idea to invest in.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's going away.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. If I knew how to use Houdini, everything would be easier. I would probably, again, have much less problems. In any case here, there's a couple of things. Let me just start here.
Is it raining again? It's raining again.
Yeah, it's raining. Okay, let's come back here. And let me hide this. So let me just display the hair. So what I did on this one, I'll just show the finished one, is I just put a bunch of little guides. And I had them bent over. When you first make them, on default, they just stick straight out. And you don't want your hair to do that because it will actually look very bad. So I just groom them with a brush, right? And then you can bend that. Now, the other thing you can do is, let's say I place a guide over here. And let's do this again. Okay, so I place a guide here. And I already sit there and I bent all these ones. Well, what I can do in XGen is I can copy a guide that I like, and I can paste the ones that I want to add over here, right? So now if I just bend one, all I have to do is just copy and paste them. The other thing is I only need to do one side. I can select that side and I can hit the mirror button and it will mirror over here. The hair is pretty simple. Under the modifiers, I just have a cut. Let me do it without modifiers so you can see it's very straight. The cut modifier just trims some of them so that they're not all the same length. Then I put a coil so that they curl, and then I just put a noise. So very simple. I just want fuzz. So there's nothing fancy that I have about this. And then I also have some on the hands. So it was pretty fast to groom. The thing that took me a while to figure out, and there's actually documentation. So if you Google like Unreal XGen export, you can get something much more thorough than what I'm about to show you. But maybe what I'll show you is just easier because reading the whole document takes time. I'm much slower if I have to read something versus someone just goes, oh, just push this button. Now, Right now, I'm using the older XGen system, right, which is called Legacy or Core. And the only way for me to export the Groom cache is that I have to convert it to the other XGen system. So let's just call the first one Core, and the other one is IGS. To me, they're both old anyway, because none of them are being updated. So they're both old. Core is sometimes called Legacy. They're both Legacy to me, because they're, if you're not updating it, they're both old. Core will not give you that support. So this is Core. What you have to do is go over to Generate, and I can convert over here. This button that says Convert to Interactive Groom, right, which is IGS. So now I'm going from Core to IGS. And in my outliner, you can see the second Groom popped up. So I can hide my original one, and I have my IGS one, right? And now I can just export this however many frames I want. If I go under Generate and under Cache, Export Cache. And then this will give me the full frame range, right? And I'll get every single frame. Core does not support that. Now, how do I apply this to some animation? Well, what I do is a couple of things. First, you have to make sure when you bring in Alembic that it has the same name that's assigned here, which is body geo. If you import that cache and the name is different, it won't actually apply. Okay, so let's say I have a new blank scene. And let's say I bring in this Mixamo rig. The Mixamo rig is temporary. It's basically just to test out problems before we actually get it rigged by somebody. And the Mixamo is just auto rigging it. Okay. Imported something, and I don't know where it is. Here we are. So here, this is a file that I got from Mixamo, and it has the rig, and it has my mesh. I don't have the cloth simulation because that's going to be done in Marvelous. I have the model here, right? And in our pipeline, we're going to assume that I have to sculpt something. Whether, for example, the elbows have problems, or for example, there's interpenetration, right? Or interpenetration would be bad because I'll have cloth sims, or the face just looks weird, like it's making a strange expression. Again, for example, in Voice in the Hollow, the eyeballs popped out of the head sometimes, right? So that had to be fixed. And not a lot. It wasn't a huge thing. It just happened to be a problem. So it would be sculpted. So what we would do, assuming that this has to be fixed, and how much did we shot model? Shot model like 95% of our shots. So I would come in here and export under cache, export selection to Alembic. I set my frame range, which is 30 frames. So it starts from 0 to 30. The options I will have on is UV right. If you don't have that on, you lose your UVs. And right face sets, which will write material assignments. I don't have material assignments yet. But these are material assignments that when I import it onto Unreal, I don't have to manually assign materials. And then world space, which just puts it in the correct space. So I always have these options. Export it here. And then I'll export this. Let's put it in here. I'll just call this body test. Okay. And I'll create a new scene just so everything is stripped out. I like to not have stuff in my scene because it's going to crash. And now I can import that Alembic. And again, assuming that this Alembic got sculpted, which again, 95% of stuff was sculpted in Voice in the Hollow. Right? Now I have my Alembic. It's been shot model. We'll get into shot modeling when we actually get there. And I make sure that my geometry has the correct name. You can see it doesn't have a hair system. If I go into my XGen tab and I want to import, and I'm probably not doing things the most efficient way. This is just how I'm coming up with it. There might be an extra step that I can strip out, but I'm just going to import my XGen description. I usually import the collection. And I do it differently than what the internet says, because I find this actually works better. So what I do is I'll look for the .xgen file. Let me just find the path. And I'll just grab the last one. Now, this last one is actually a file written out with every time I save a Maya file. So every time I save a Maya file with the Groom, it will save a .xgen file, right? And I grab my latest one that I'm happy with, and I import. It will ask me if I want to overwrite, and I don't want to overwrite. So I'll just create a new collection. And now it will import the hair, right? Now it doesn't always update. So you can see when I scrub through it, it goes behind it. But if I hit the update button, you can see the hair is there. Maybe I should color it so everyone can kind of see it. I'll just create a hair physical shader. Because right now, I think it just has like a Lambert. Okay, so now we can see this color. This color is just for preview. So we can see the brown hair. And now I actually have it. Again, it's just not updating. I just take this and I can just convert it. It's still very manual, but I don't have to manually adjust things. So it's just, to me, a few extra steps. I convert this to interactive. I have this system now, which will update with it. And I can just cache it out. Okay. Once I cache it out, it gives me the Alembic file, which then if I go back to Unreal, I have it hidden. Which is this hair system right here. We did decide to not use hair all the time, just because I don't think we have to have it if it's very far away, and we're only using it on this character just to make it look softer. Our second character is actually going to have hair on the head, so it always has to have hair. We're just going to be selective because the files will get really, really large. Let's see. I really thought about studying later at your academy, but I'm living in Germany. That's far away. Too far. Yeah, that's far. I mean, I think school is always great because it's going to make you really focused. But if someone is super motivated, you can teach yourself. It's just hard to be motivated. I have a hard time myself.
That's a nice comment. Thank you.
Well, that's awesome.
Episode 26. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
This question I don't know the answer to. May I know when the new student rule will be released? I actually don't pay attention to that. It just, yeah, I don't know when it is. Okay, so once I have this here, there are a couple things in the import settings. I'll just put it in here in a new folder. It doesn't take that long to import either, so I think this is okay. Here's my hair Alembic. If I drop it in, the settings are a little bit different. They're actually really strange to me. They're not the same settings. Let me minimize all this because I'm asking for some problems here. And I actually have to put them into notes. because I won't remember all these little things. The other thing is too, like I notice there's a lot of little settings that you have to have down. And when, we were working before in our old pipeline, you didn't have to worry about all that. It just kind of was easier. And if you get your settings off, it doesn't work or it becomes like a huge problem later. So for the Alembic hair, okay, so here's a good question. So UE will import Alembic file or we need external plugin. You don't need, you need a plugin, but it's already built into Unreal. You have to go into you have to go in your plugin. And what I do is I search Alembic and I have two of them, Alembic importer, which is for a regular mesh, and Alembic groom importer, which is your hair. So you have to check that. And then when you check that on, you have to restart and it will take a moment to restart. And then once you have those, you're good to go. Let's drop this hair back in. Now the options, which are not default options, trying to resize the window. I guess that's as big as I can get it. Your rotations, again, they're completely different than regular Alembic files. It has to be 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees. I'll just write it. Negative 90, 0, 180 on rotation. And then your scale, which is really strange to me. Your X is -1, and then 1, and then 1. I will check on groom cache. If I don't bring in the groom cache, it won't actually bring in the rest of the frames. It will just bring in a still. You want to check on groom asset, which is basically the model. And I'm going to skip empty frames. So my frames right now start from 0 to 30. So I think that if I don't check on skip empty frames, I think that's fine. But sometimes our frames might start, let's say it starts at 100 to 200. If you don't check skip empty frames, it's still going to try to do the first 0 to 100. So it will bring in 0 to 200 frames. So you want to make sure to skip the frames that are not there. This causes a lot of problems when we first started working in our last project. So once you have that set, you can just hit import. And it will take a second. And this is kind of all I have to talk about today. Because I spent so much time troubleshooting. Now, when I bring that in, I'll have a groom cache, another one that says groom cache, but they are actually different. Let me just erase. I'm just having problems with this pen. One is a strands cache, one is a guides cache. And if I want to load this, I'm going to bring in just the groom asset, which is one that just says groom, right? Which is this first one. And it's just sitting in some weird space, so I'll reset it. And I'm going to hide all this other stuff, so you can see that here. And it's not going to do anything. Let me hide this one too. Okay. What you have to do is, once you drag it in, it's in your outliner. You have to have your sequencer open, and you got to drop it in your sequencer. And the other thing you have to do here is this is an extra step. You don't have to do regular ones. In your outliner, you select that groom asset, and under your details, you'll see there's actually a groom cache feature here, right? So we have groom asset, which is connected here default. The groom cache is actually not connected to anything. So you have to go back into your content browser, look for and there's two of them. I'm not going to do the guides. I'm going to do the strands. So what that will do is give me every single strand. And you have to drop it in here. Now, once you have that, and again, where I'm in my sequencer, and I already dragged it in here, I've attached the animation. I'll start from the front of my frame, and just attach the cache. Now, when I have that, I can now scrub through it, and you can see it's animated. And you have to do the steps, otherwise you'll just have this one single frame, and it's not going to move. And it's like this weird dark fuzzy thing right here. So you can see that's working. That area. Let's see. Oh, Chatty on Fire. Well, thank you, Chatty on Fire. So hopefully it's helpful.
We actually go back and watch it too because we forget what the hell we did.
Yeah. So here's some comments. So Unreal will auto import Alembic file, or we need, okay, that one I already addressed. That's because Maya used right-hand side rule. Game engines don't like the rule, so you need to strange scale. Yeah, but I don't actually have to do a negative scale on the model. So if I import an Alembic model that's not hair, it doesn't have to have that. So the hairs just have to have that, whatever. It's not intuitive for me. When there's two different settings, it confuses me.
It's like a different setting for every different thing.
Yeah. So it's not like, yeah, I just can't remember all that stuff. The other thing that I had trouble remembering, let's just turn this lit. And I'll delete this. Hopefully I don't crash anything. And let's just hide this here. And I'll turn off some things.
Your computer's dying.
Yeah, it's crying. So let's see if I can show this problem. And I don't know, for those who are watching, maybe you have a better answer. So I actually like to hear what, if anyone else had this problem. So when I first set this up, let me try to see if I can minimize that so it's a little bit bigger. So this is a brand new project, and you have to turn on stuff. Okay. And I did turn on ray tracing. Now, I turned on virtual shadow maps, right? Because we're supposed to, that's what everyone recommends. And then by default, I don't have ray trace shadows. My computer's acting weird. So I can't actually seem to circle this because it's getting very slow. It actually kind of froze. Hold on. I have too many things open. Now, by default, I don't have ray trace shadows on, which is under hardware ray tracing. I was going to try to write that out on the screen, but it's freezing. So under hardware ray tracing, ray trace shadows is not on by default. And I remember someone saying, don't turn it on. I don't know why. It's probably because it's slower. But notice here, the shadows around the nose are actually really pixelated. And I don't know if you can see that, Miguel.
You can see it.
So, and it's pixelated here. So the one thing I had to figure that out again. I couldn't remember all these things. And what I realized is we need to turn on ray trace shadows to get rid of that. And it took me a while to remember that. So I tried to look up some videos and documentations and forums, and people gave different answers, right? And those answers didn't work for me, like how you can cull your shadows and stuff like that. My answer that just seemed to fix everything was just turn on ray trace shadows under hardware ray tracing, under project settings. And you can see that made it smooth. So does it slow it down? Probably. but I don't want pixelated shadows. I'd rather have really, really smooth shadows. So that was also one of the features that I forgot about.
Keep press play.
So now, yeah, that's what we have.
Cool.
Any questions you want to answer, Miguel?
No, honestly, I just like seeing this guy moving around like that. It looks so great. I mean, I could show you guys a few things that we're doing behind the scenes. My focus, like I've been saying, is I've been working on the script because without that, we have nothing to really talk about in terms of the story. But we brought in this guy called Vague Sedan or Sedan Vague. I'm not really sure how. Sometimes he goes Vague Sedan, but amazing artist, and he's going to be helping us with the moths. So the whole thing is these little guys, as you guys saw, they're all made out of fabric, and then the bad guys are the moths that want to eat the fabric guys. So I really wanted the creatures, the moths, to look like demons because I didn't want it to look like a not History Channel, but a National Geographic version of moths. I wanted it to look like the way they kind of imagine the moths to be, like these horrific demons. So I still want them to look like moths, but I want them to look really terrifying. I've always loved his work. I think he's one of the best creature guys around. And we'll have him on the stream once we're closer to having something finished. But he'll be on here and he'll go through his process because he's just beautiful design work. I think his stuff is exceptional.
Yeah, it's super good.
Super good. And just really original takes on stuff that usually falls to like a kind of corny aesthetic, but he just gets this horror stuff to look so fresh and
really elegant.
Awesome.
And
it's beautiful. It's just really beautiful.
It's horrifying, but beautiful.
Yeah. So he's going to be helping us with the moths. So I'm pretty happy about that because I think he's going to bring a huge contrast to the little fabric guys, and that's intentional. I want them to look like they're from like almost two separate movies, right? As they would be. This is one. The little guys are one species, and then the moths are the demons. So I want them to look really scary. So when you see these things, imagine this thing.
Little cloth guys
trying to take on trans little cute guys. It's going to be horrible, and I think that's what I want,
Yeah.
Make cute little guys and then torture them. so that's what we've been doing behind the scenes, getting this going and starting to do some of the casting stuff. And we'll talk more about the casting stuff as we go. The only reason why we haven't gone into that yet is because since the script is not done, I don't want to like when we were doing the Devil's Trill Sonata, which is the project we ended up abandoning after a few weeks, I actually did reach out to some actors that I liked that are, indie actors. And there was one guy that I actually really liked, and his name was Giuseppe, and he was perfect, Italian guy. And when I told him that the project died, like he was all excited about it. So we just don't want to reach out to people until we know that these are the roles that we have. But anyway, so this guy's helping us out. Pretty awesome. I'm super excited. I think he's going to bring a lot of style to our project, and we'll have him on the stream in the next few weeks. So that's cool. We also are going to have Marvelous Designer on the stream, like the product team.
Yes, and a really amazing artist.
Yeah, amazing.
And I watch her streams.
Yeah.
So she's really good.
So she'll be on here, I think the weekend of April 15th. So she'll be on here as well. He'll be on here, Fig. And then, yeah. Let's see. Jesus, Sculptor's Nice. What happened with that project? With the Devil's Trill Sonata? We just got bored of it.
Yeah.
Well, here's what actually happened. So
yeah.
We were offered a really crazy project on a really cool show that's on Netflix, and we ended up deciding that we wanted to focus on our own stuff. And the reason why we were doing the Devil's Trill Sonata is because we thought we could get it done really quickly. And that's not how we want to do stuff. We didn't want to do stuff because we wanted to get it done quickly. We wanted to do things because we thought they were cool and
Yeah.
put our best effort into it. So we decided to turn down that crazy, amazing opportunity and focus on our own stuff. So this is the project we wanted to do, which is the cotton mail story, fabric guys, the Threadlings. So
It's also, that story was based on something that supposedly happened in real life. We would have made it more fantasy, but when it's based somewhat on something that's real, you can't change that much, because you could be disrespectful to some point, or you're just going too far.
well, it's not just
and you just
that,
feel
it's-
kind of,
yeah. I mean, yes, you're right.
You get locked in if it's based on somebody's story.
Yeah.
And that was another thing.
Yeah.
This one we were more excited about. I was very timid about the one we're working on because I felt there were going to be more problems, and I was right. There's more problems. Right?
Yeah, but the cool thing about what we're working on now is like the Giuseppe Tartini and the Devil's Trill Sonata. It was really cool, but like Tran says, it's based on something that quote unquote happened. So you're kind of stuck in that kind of box. Whereas here it's like, oh, they're made out of fabric and there's giant moths and they look like demons from hell, and we could do whatever we want. I think that's so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Miguel is still working on the script because it's very important for it to be just right. That it can't be a process that's rushed, because then that actually hurts us in the long run.
Yeah.
So we always got to make sure certain things are not rushed. At some point, things are going to get band-aided, right, and fixed in really weird ways. But you don't want to try to fix the story as you go, because that could cause all kinds of problems. And ultimately, I know that this stream, we talk about technical things. I don't see myself as a technical person at all. I'm not that technical. I'm really much more artistic than technical. So there's things that I don't have the best answers for. I'm just kind of, doing more technical things, but my end goal, or our end goal at the end of the day, is to try to tell a story that we like, to be imaginative, and also try to make sure it looks good, because we have background as artists. So Miguel and we see ourselves as artists, filmmakers, trying to tell stories and make something look cool.
I'll show you something that we were doing quite a bit. So if we go to ChatGPT, we obviously would never use ChatGPT to write our scripts, right? First of all, I would give you the worst script on the earth. But one of the things that I've been doing that is pretty awesome is I'm almost using this thing to be like my first round of like a reader, somebody that critiques it. So I'll show you what I've been doing lately that is really cool. Is I'll feed it the entire script. I'll literally say, read this, and I'll feed it the whole script. And then I'll just ask it to tell me the character traits of each character, right? So when I'm writing the script, I'm not telling it, hey, this character is this. A lot of it is in subtext. A lot of it is in what they say and what they do, rather than it explicitly saying, hey, this character is this way. And so if I ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me about the character, here's my script. If it tells you everything about your character and it's figuring out everything, you're like, oh, okay, it's all in there. That's cool. So now you know that all the traits of each character are here. So Koch, he's determined. He wants to be the greatest mage ever. He's willing to work hard to achieve his goals, but he's got like anxiety issues. He stutters. I never said in the script that he stutters. So the fact that ChatGPT could pick up the fact that he stutters when he's nervous, this is amazing. This is an amazing tool to use as a writer, because you now know, if this thing could pick up on this stuff, then a normal human is going to pick up on this stuff. And this is what I've been using it for a lot, right?
Yeah, it's like an assistant that
It's an
just helps
assistant.
you review your script.
Yeah.
So
it's not about using it just to write your scripts, because that would be stupid. And like I said, if I ask it to, because sometimes I'm like, okay, so what would happen next, just to see what it would do. Every story is like a Hallmark special. Like every story ends with like the happy ending, the worst version, TV special that you could ever imagine. And all our stories are messed up, but this is really kick-ass, using it as an assistant rather than as your writer, right? So cannot stress this enough, how cool this is, how much we love this. So you can see this is like our 4 main characters. So we have a Cot, Mayo, which is his best friend. We have some designs we'll show for this guy, which is really cool. The professor, who's just like one-armed, worn and tired warrior. And then the moths are the bad guys, right? So these are the 4 main characters. But yeah, so we've been using this a ton, and we'll be able to go more over the story as we wrap it up. But we now know what the story is, and basically, it's all taking place in this place called the Cedar. The Cedar is a tree, right? Kind of like in Fraggle Rock, how they lived in that hole or whatever. And the reason why they live in a cedar is because moths hate the smell of cedar, right? And our story is about Cot, who's this little guy made out of fabric who wants to be a mage. The mage are like the Jedis of this society, and they're the protectors of this cedar. But Cot is young, and he's very nervous, and he has a very bad stutter. He stutters when he's nervous. When he's by himself, he doesn't stutter at all. So he's considered too much of a liability. So he's told that he needs to take care of Mayo. He doesn't know why, but Mayo's kind of this special character. He doesn't talk a lot. He's kind of awkward. And they've kind of become like best friends. Cod doesn't appreciate him enough, but Mayo loves Cod. He sees him as the greatest thing in the world.
and Mayo is younger.
Mayo's even younger.
Yeah.
And Cod kind of sees it like he's stuck with this little kid. But and remember, think of little kid, and you just saw what the little characters look like. They all look like,
they're even more little.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Cod is kind of upset that he's always stuck taking care of Mayo. He wants to hang out with the cool kids and be an awesome mage. But again, he stutters. He's not very good. So that's basically the story, is about these 2 guys and realizing that Mayo has more of a secret than people realize. And even though he doesn't talk much at all, he actually has a lot of special powers that we find out about as the story goes on.
And just to be clear, the stuttering is a problem because he can't chant the spells.
Yeah, he can't do the incantations.
Yeah.
And that's obviously like a perfect, people that stutter when they're really nervous. And the fact that he's a mage, you would need to do your incantations at the moments where you would be the most nervous, right? A moth is coming to attack you, to eat you. You better get your incantation right. A lion is coming at you. You better get it right. And that's when he would stutter, right? So we're getting all that stuff in there, and we're showing this to someone that has a bad stutter, and having them go over it and give us their advice and everything. And so it should be pretty cool. And then the moths, of course, want to eat these guys, and
they want to lay eggs in them.
They want to lay larvae in them. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Everyone has moth problems. We have moth problems.
We hate moths.
They lay eggs in our Persian rugs. So
this is going to be our revenge story. We're doing this just so we could kill as many moths as possible. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's cool is we get to grab all the things that we were really into, which is like Fraggle Rock, which I used to really love as a kid. Jedis, like obviously behind me, you could see my love for Star Wars. And then what else? Like Indiana Jones, like adventure-y stuff. And then having, these characters kind of look like something from the Dark Crystal, or something from like a Jim Henson film from the 80s, is something that we've really wanted. But again, we wanted the characters to look really cute, to contrast the horrible, hideous moths. it would be kind of more like Skeksis or whatever. But yeah.
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 Here's a question here. How are you planning to do environment? A mix of modular and freehand place things?
That's a great question, and that's something that we are still trying to figure out. So the aesthetic is everything. This entire environment is made out of thread and made out of yarn. Everything in this world is fabric, except for outside of the cedar, right? So it would be a hole. It's just covered, lined with fabric. So we're trying to figure out what would be the best workflow for that, because everything has to be made out of cloth. Outside of the cedar, everything is normal. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to do it. If I had unlimited money, the way I would want to do it is build everything as a miniature, use the Vive Mars, shoot everything, and then make the characters in Unreal. But I don't think that that's going to be possible for this, but that would be my ideal workflow.
Yeah, I'm not good at making stuff in real life. So
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that stuff very well.
Yeah, but that would be what I would like to do.
Yeah. I mean, that would be really cool. So
yeah. But anyway, I think that's it for this week. So like I said, we're going to have yeah, that's a great. Yeah. Well, yes.
Yeah. We do.
Yes, we do.
But we again, we tried to choose something that we thought was more simple, and I don't think it was worth making.
Yeah.
We looked at it at the end of the day and we're like, so this one might be a couple months longer, but a couple months long, like if you know, let's say it takes an extra 3 months to do, and that seems like a lot of work. But in hindsight, like, what do you leave behind? Like, all I will do is, if we make a project that we don't feel so strong about, you still have to spend a lot of time. You still got to spend money, and you still.
So you might as well just do it right.
Yeah, you got to spend all these hours. It's still a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Just to do that, and then all I'm going to do is, when I look at that short, is just keep thinking I should have done a better job.
Yeah, because the time is going to pass regardless.
Yeah.
So.
At the end of the day, there's going to be people who don't like what you do. They're going to think it sucks. They're going to criticize it. Or
yeah, someone posted on YouTube this week that, how dare us do something with Satan and not mention Jesus regarding the voice in the hollow. And they said that our short is total trash. It was actually probably the best review I've ever heard. But,
yeah, you're going to always have that, right?
Yeah.
So you're, so ultimately, you know, the way we feel is that you can't please everyone no matter what.
Yeah.
So you have to like be happy with it. So if I finish something and I go, well, it's not perfect, but did I do my very best on everything? Yes, I did. So that's it. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So for all the script stuff, and you know, I do want to cover script stuff. I just want to have the script done before. We are using Final Draft, which is an amazing tool for all of this stuff. So I could show you like just this one page, for example. Some of the things that we're using ChatGPT for that are really cool is, for example, when it comes down to all the spells, right? You don't need ChatGPT for this, but all the spells are in Latin, right? So just asking it, hey, give me the dialogue in Latin. Boom, you'll tell it what you want, and it'll give it to you in Latin. So that's been very powerful. The other thing is, if I'm ever uncomfortable about a certain line or whatever, like let's just say Cot leads away with a blue magical glow emanating from his hands, I could grab this. Let me just pull this out. Right? And you don't have to do this, and we don't do this all the time, but I'm just saying, if you're uncomfortable about writing, one of the powerful things about this, again, don't use this to write your story, but you could say, give me 10 variations of this line. Right? And now it'll give you 10 variations of just that one line. So you wrote this line, but now here's 10 different ways of approaching that exact same line of dialogue, or not dialogue, of action. So even if you decide to stick with your own, sometimes what's cool about this is it helps you break out of this kind of box that you're in, So we're using it for this kind of stuff, not to come up with a story, not to write it for us, but to almost break us out of, this box. And if someone goes, "Oh, that's not real writing," I say, "That's great, because we don't really care to be real writers. We just want to get the film done. We want to tell our story. However we get to that finish line, we don't care."
Well, there's a technical aspect in writing, and it helps out. You can
Yeah.
even just use it to fix your grammar.
Which we do. We do that.
So,
Yeah.
You can have an account Grammarly. Grammarly is actually very expensive.
Yeah.
So
But-
ChatGPT can do it for free.
But you can see how interesting this is, how you could just get 10 variations. And some of the things that we end up doing whenever we do it like this is we might go, "Hey, you know what? I am going to stick with the way I wrote it, but I like that one word that they used," right? And you might end up just using that one word. And it's not that you didn't know the word aura, for example. You were just like, "Oh, for some reason, it just wasn't coming to my mind. I might just use it this one time." So using it to just break away from, breaking out of a box, I think is great. So, yeah. So, anyway, that's it for
this stream. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, and I really appreciate the comments. It's definitely helpful, right? So maybe in the future, I'll try to learn Houdini, or I'll look into Ornatrix for hair, and it's based on what you guys are telling me. So all that stuff helps me out, and I appreciate that a lot. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and if you want to follow our work, you can just follow us at Instagram on Half Empty Studios. That's where we usually post, behind the scenes stuff that we're not ready to post like to everyone yet, but we'll post it there. Yeah, thanks guys. Ben, good to see you, dude. Miss you already, man. I haven't seen you in a while. The Gnomon crew, Netbug, Chatty on Fire is always on here. It's the best. Is it Chatty or Chady? Chady. I don't know. Oh, and we probably are going to be at SIGGRAPH. If anybody's at SIGGRAPH, I think we're going to be doing a talk there. I'm not totally sure, but I think so.
Okay.
So yeah. All right, guys.
Thank you
so much. The first shit. Now I forgot which was the first one I did.
Chatty.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. So thank you so much, and I'm going to press my outro.mp4. See you guys.